Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be diving into something that I think you're really going to enjoy. We're going to be talking about how to declutter your life for more happiness and success. Now, I know what you might be thinking, oh no, not another decluttering episode. I just cleaned out my closet.
Right.
But don't worry, this isn't about getting rid of physical stuff. Well, it's partly about that, but it's more about clearing out the mental and emotional clutter that might be holding you back.
That's right. It's like giving your mind a good spring cleaning.
Right.
We all pick up beliefs and habits and sometimes even relationships, honestly, that no longer serve us.
Yeah.
And so by identifying those and, kind of gently letting go of those things, it opens up space for so many more positive experiences.
Okay. I love that analogy of like a mental spring cleaning, because I think we can all relate to how good it feels to like clean out a closet or clean out a room, just like how much lighter you feel afterwards. So where do we even begin with this mental decluttering process? What are some of the things that we should be looking to clear out?
Well, one of the biggest culprits is, and this affects so many people, is negative self-talk. You know, that inner critic, that voice that's always whispering doubts and criticisms, anxieties. It can be really pervasive.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. It's like having this little gremlin sitting on your shoulder, just like constantly chipping away at your confidence, right? Like, you're not good enough. You'll never be able to do that. I mean, we've all been there, right?
Exactly. And the thing is, a lot of times we don't even realize how much we're letting that voice run the show.
Right.
It just becomes this background noise that kind of shapes our beliefs and honestly limits our potential.
So how do we quiet down that inner critic? Because it feels like it can be so ingrained sometimes.
Well, one really powerful technique is using affirmations. And I know this might sound a little cheesy at first, but consciously choosing positive statements and repeating them to yourself, it can really rewire your thinking.
Interesting.
Over time. Instead of listening to those negative whispers, you can try replacing them with things like, I am capable, I am worthy, I am strong.
So it's really about intentionally shifting that narrative in our minds, right? Instead of just accepting those negative thoughts as truth, we're actively choosing to believe something more empowering.
Yes, exactly. It's like you're building this new mental muscle. The more you practice those affirmations, the stronger it becomes, and the easier it is to kind of challenge those negative thought patterns when they come up.
It's almost like training your brain for optimism.
It is. And research has actually shown that the more you consistently use affirmations, it can actually change your brain activity in a measurable way.
Wow.
Which can boost self-esteem and reduce stress.
That's so interesting. So we really can change the way we think and feel just by changing the words that we're telling ourselves.
Absolutely. And this actually all ties into the whole idea of the growth mindset. We're not fixed. We're not limited by our past experiences or those negative beliefs that we've kind of picked up along the way. We have this incredible capacity to learn and to grow and to evolve throughout our entire lives.
That makes a lot of sense. So we're tackling negative thoughts. What's next on the list of things to clear out?
Well, another big one that holds a lot of people back is the fear of failure. I mean, so many dreams are left unrealized because we're terrified of making a mistake.
Oh, yeah.
Or not measuring up.
Ugh, it's so real. And that fear can be so paralyzing sometimes. It almost feels easier to just stay in your comfort zone, even if you're not truly happy there.
Yeah, it's understandable. But here's the thing. Failure is inevitable. It's part of growth. Think about any successful person, they've all faced setbacks. They've all had failures. That's how they learned. That's how they adapted. That's how they achieved their goals.
That's such a good point. I mean, imagine if like Thomas Edison had given up after his first, I don't even know how many times he failed, thousands of times, probably with the light bulb, right? We wouldn't have electric lights.
Exactly. So those quote unquote failures, they were actually essential stepping stones on his path to success. So what if, instead of being afraid of failure, we looked at it as valuable feedback, a chance to learn, to adjust our approach, and try again, with more knowledge and more experience?
I like that. So we're swapping out negative self-talk for affirmations. We're embracing failure as a friend, not a foe. What other mental clutter should we be looking out for?
Well, this one is a big one, especially these days, and it's comparison. I mean, it's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to other people, whether it's their achievements, their possessions, even how perfect their life looks on social media.
The comparison trap, it's like quicksand for the soul.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely guilty of that, like endlessly scrolling on social media and suddenly feeling like I'm not doing enough, not being enough. I think we can all relate to that.
And it's not a fair comparison. You're looking at everyone's highlight reels, not the behind the scenes, the struggles and the doubts and the failures that everybody has. It's like comparing your entire movie to somebody else's carefully edited trailer.
Yeah, that's such a good way to put it. So how do we escape this comparison trap? Because it feels like it's everywhere.
It is, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the antidote is to really cultivate a deep sense of self-acceptance and to focus on your own journey.
Well,
Celebrate your own wins, no matter how small they may seem to other people. Remember, your path is not meant to look like anyone else's.
I was reading about a really successful entrepreneur, and she said that she made a conscious decision to really limit her social media use because she realized how much she was getting sucked into that comparison game.
That's smart. That's a great example of setting boundaries. You have to protect your mental well-being. It's being mindful of the things that kind of trigger those negative comparisons and taking steps to create a more supportive and empowering environment for yourself.
Absolutely. So we're ditching the comparison game. We're embracing our own unique journey. What else can we clear out?
Well, this one often goes hand in hand with comparison, and it can be a real energy drainer.
Yeah.
And that is perfectionism.
Oh, perfectionism. I know it all too well. It's like this never-ending quest for flawlessness that leads to procrastination, stress, and a whole lot of unfinished projects.
Yes. It's so important to distinguish between striving for excellence, which is healthy and it's motivating, and then there's striving for perfection, which can be so paralyzing.
Yeah, it really is. Like perfection is this mythical beast that always stays just out of reach, right?
Right.
And in the pursuit of it, we often miss out on the joy of the process and the satisfaction of just doing our best.
Exactly. And you know what? A lot of times, perfectionism is really just masking a fear of failure or a need for that external validation that we were just talking about. So instead of striving for this unattainable ideal, what if we focused on progress? Embracing the idea that we're going to make mistakes, we're going to learn from them, and we're going to keep moving forward.
I love that.
Yeah,
It
thanks.
takes the pressure off. It allows us to be more creative and experimental. Okay, so we're saying goodbye to negative self-talk. We're embracing failure as a stepping stone. We're ditching the comparison game. We're releasing the grip of perfectionism. What's next on our decluttering journey?
So now that we've kind of cleared out some of those inner obstacles, let's shift our focus a little bit. Let's talk about the external things, the things in our environment that can be weighing us down.
Right.
Because sometimes, the people we surround ourselves with, even the physical spaces we're in, those can either really fuel our growth or they can totally drain our energy.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like that old saying, right? Like you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So it's really important to be mindful of, like, who are we keeping company with? And what kinds of environments are we choosing to spend our time in?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with relationships. I think we've all encountered them, those energy vampires, the people who consistently leave us feeling just drained or negative, maybe even worse about ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the toxic relationships that we need to kind of gently release from our lives.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like they just suck the joy out of everything. But it can be so hard to like distance yourself from those people,
Yeah.
especially if they're, family members, longtime friends, or even colleagues.
It's true. It can be so challenging. And there's no, easy answer, no one-size-fits-all solution. But it is important to remember that you deserve to be surrounded by people who lift you up, who support you, who inspire you to be your best self. So if a relationship is consistently leaving you feeling depleted, it might be time to reevaluate its role in your life.
That's a good point. So we're setting boundaries and we're creating space for more positive relationships. What about our physical environments? How can we kind of declutter those to boost our well-being?
Think about how you feel when you're in a space that's cluttered and chaotic. Like, let's say your home or your office. Is it a mess? Does it leave you feeling stressed, overwhelmed? Maybe you can't even focus?
Oh, 100%. I'm definitely someone who, like, my mind just can't relax when my surroundings are a mess. Messy space equals messy mind for me.
Yeah, it's amazing how much our physical environment impacts our mental state. Because clutter, it just bombards our senses, it competes for our attention, it drains our energy. So just creating a more organized and streamlined space can really do wonders for our productivity, for our creativity, just for our overall sense of peace.
It's not just about aesthetics. It's like really creating an environment that supports our well-being
Exactly.
and allows our minds to function at their best, which is so important.
Exactly. So it's about being intentional. Like when you look around, are the objects you see bringing you joy? Do they serve a purpose? If not, it might be time to let them go.
I love that. It's like being a curator of your own space, making sure that it reflects your values and supports your goals,
Exactly.
and just creating that space that really feels like a sanctuary. Okay, so we've talked about negative self-talk, we've talked about the fear of failure, comparison, perfectionism, now toxic relationships, and clutter. What else do we need to be aware of when it comes to this whole mental decluttering thing?
Okay, so let's move on to some of those kind of sneaky mental patterns that can really sabotage our happiness and success if we're not careful. Have you ever noticed how procrastination can just completely derail even the best laid plans?
Ugh, procrastination is my nemesis. Like, I feel like I'm a black belt in the art of putting things off until the very last minute,
Right.
but I know it's not healthy,
Yeah,
and it just adds so much stress to my life.
it is. And procrastination is so tricky because it often stems from fear. Fear of failure, maybe even fear of success, or even just the fear of the task itself feeling overwhelming. But the more we give into it, the more power it seems to have over us.
Yeah, it's like this vicious cycle. You put something off because it feels daunting, and then it becomes even more daunting because you've waited so long, and then you just keep procrastinating even more.
Exactly. So how do we break free from this procrastination trap? Well, one strategy is to break those large tasks down
Ah.
into smaller, more manageable steps
No, that's good. Yeah.
because it feels much less intimidating. To tackle something when it feels doable, right? And then you can celebrate those small wins along the way.
Yes, love celebrating the small wins.
Exactly. And that actually keeps our motivation up and it reminds us that we're making progress. And it's also helpful to set realistic deadlines and create a supportive environment for yourself.
What do you mean by like a supportive environment when it comes to procrastination?
Well, it could be as simple as finding a quiet space to work, minimizing distractions, maybe even creating a dedicated workspace that inspires you. It's really about setting ourselves up for success, both mentally and physically.
Yeah, that makes sense. So breaking down tasks, celebrating those small wins, creating those supportive environments to really tackle that procrastination. What other like sneaky mental patterns should we be on the lookout for?
Well, let's talk about the victim mentality. This is a really subtle but pervasive way of thinking that can really keep us feeling stuck and powerless.
Okay, tell me more about the victim mentality. What are some of the signs that we might have fallen into this trap?
It's basically this underlying belief that external circumstances are controlling our lives and that we're helpless to change them. And a lot of times it manifests as blaming other people for our problems or feeling sorry for ourselves and making excuses instead of taking action.
Oh, I've definitely been there.
Oh,
It's easy to get caught up in that cycle of negativity and feel like the world is against you.
it is. It's understandable, especially if you've been through some tough times. But the problem is that the victim mentality keeps us stuck in a state of powerlessness. It prevents us from recognizing our own agency and from really taking responsibility for creating the life that we want.
So how do we shift out of this victim mentality? It sounds like it requires a pretty major mindset shift.
It does. It really does require making that conscious effort to reframe our thinking. So instead of dwelling on what's happening to us, we can shift our focus to what we can control. Like what choices can we make? What actions can we take? What resources are available to us? It's about reclaiming our power and recognizing that we always have choices, even in those difficult situations.
I love that. It's about taking ownership of our lives and understanding that we're not just passive passengers, but active creators of our own experiences.
Exactly. So it's about shifting from why is this happening to me to what can I learn from this? Or how can I use this experience to grow?
It's such a great reframe. It's about finding the opportunity for growth even in the midst of challenges. Okay, so we're ditching procrastination, we're ditching the victim mentality. What other mental clutter might be lurking in the shadows waiting to sabotage our happiness and success?
Let's talk about the need for approval. It's a common human desire. We want to be liked, we want to be accepted. But when that desire becomes excessive or starts to dictate our choices, it can really lead to unhappiness and a sense of feeling lost.
Oh, yeah. I think we've all been there. I know I've definitely spent way too much time and energy trying to please other people, even if it meant sacrificing my own needs and desires.
It's a trap that so many of us fall into, especially in a culture that often values that external validation more than, being authentic. But the truth is, seeking constant approval from other people is like building your house on shifting sand.
Oh, wow.
It's just not a stable foundation
Right.
for true happiness.
It's true because you'll never be able to please everyone all the time. And you'll just end up feeling exhausted and inauthentic in the process.
Exactly. So how do we break free from this need for approval? Well, it starts with cultivating a deep sense of self-worth that comes from within, not from external sources. It's about recognizing your inherent value as a human being,
Right.
regardless of what other people think or say about you.
That is so important. So much of our happiness is tied to how we feel about ourselves
Yes.
and not what other people think about us. So it's about valuing our own opinions, our own choices, even if they're not popular or what everyone else is doing.
Precisely. It's about trusting your own intuition, honoring your values, and really just living in alignment with your true self.
Okay, so we're saying goodbye to the need for approval. We're embracing our authentic selves. What else can we clear out to create more space for joy and fulfillment in our lives?
Let's talk about the fear of change. Change is just an inevitable part of life. Yet so many of us resist it, we cling to the familiar, and we stay stuck in our comfort zones, even when we know deep down that it's time to move on.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well. Like change can be so scary, and it often feels so much easier and safer to just stick with what you know, even if it's no longer serving you.
It's true. But here's the thing, growth and transformation happen outside of our comfort zones. Think about it. If a caterpillar never went through that process of metamorphosis,
Oh, that's good.
which seems chaotic and uncomfortable,
Yeah.
it would never become the beautiful butterfly it was meant to be.
That is such a beautiful analogy, and it really reminds us that change, even when it feels uncomfortable, can lead to something so extraordinary.
Exactly. So instead of feeling change, what if we embraced it as an opportunity for growth, for expansion, for new beginnings?
I love that reframe. It's about shifting our perspective and seeing change not as a threat, but as a chance to evolve and become even more fully ourselves.
Precisely. And remember, you don't have to navigate change alone.
Yeah, that's such an important point. We're social creatures, and having a supportive network can make all the difference when we're going through transitions or facing challenges in our lives.
Absolutely. Reaching out to friends and family, maybe mentors, even a therapist, those can provide invaluable support and guidance and encouragement when we need it most. And sometimes even just sharing what we're going through with someone we trust, it can really help us to gain clarity and perspective.
Yeah, I think we often underestimate the power of connection and community. There's something so incredibly healing about knowing that we're not alone in our struggles.
And you know what? That brings us to one final thing we might want to consider releasing, and that is the belief that we have to do it all alone.
It's so easy to fall into that trap,
Right.
right? Like we need to be strong and independent all the time. But asking for help doesn't make you weak.
No, not at all. In fact, I think there's real strength in being vulnerable, in allowing yourself to receive support when you need it. We live in a culture that often glorifies self-reliance.
Yeah.
And it looks at needing help as a weakness, but honestly, we are wired for connection.
Right.
We thrive when we have that sense of belonging, when we know we have support.
And it makes such a difference, right? It's like we all carry these invisible burdens around.
I do.
And sometimes just sharing those burdens with someone we trust can make them feel a little bit lighter.
Exactly. And it's not just about receiving that support, it's about offering it to other people as well.
Yeah.
When we extend kindness and compassion, just a listening ear to others, it creates this ripple effect, this positivity that benefits everyone.
I love that. It's recognizing that we're all interconnected and supporting each other is essential for, everyone's well-being.
Absolutely. And, building a supportive network, it takes time, it takes effort.
Yeah.
It's about nurturing relationships, being there for others, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and to receive that support in return.
This has been such an insightful conversation, honestly. We've covered so much ground today, from those pesky negative thoughts to the importance of connection and support, decluttering our lives in a really holistic way.
It is pretty amazing how much control we actually have over our own happiness and well-being.
Yeah.
When we start to become aware of the things that are holding us back and make a conscious effort to, just gently release them, it can make such a difference.
Exactly. And you don't have to become a completely different person overnight.
No.
It's about making these small, intentional shifts, whether it's in our thinking or our habits or our environment, to just create a little bit more space for that joy and fulfillment and success.
It's a journey, it's not a destination. There's always going to be new things to learn and new challenges to overcome, new opportunities for growth. But the more we practice these principles of decluttering, both internally and externally, the more we become empowered to create those lives that we really, truly desire.
So for our listeners who are feeling inspired, what is one small step that they can take today to start decluttering their lives?
I would say just pick one thing.
Okay.
One thing that really resonated with you from today's conversation. Maybe it's practicing those affirmations. Maybe it's setting a boundary in a relationship. Maybe it's just clearing off one corner of your desk. Pick one thing and commit to taking action on it today.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's about taking small, consistent steps rather than feeling like you have to overhaul everything all at once, right?
Exactly. Progress over perfection is key.
I love that. This has been such an inspiring conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. And remember, the power to transform your life lies within you. You have everything you need to create that life filled with joy and purpose and meaning.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And for our listeners, don't forget to share your takeaways and connect with us on social media. We would love to hear what resonated with you and how you're putting these principles into practice.
Yeah. And until next time, keep decluttering, keep growing, and keep shining.
See you next time.